The Blind Side of Envy, Chapter 1, The Prayer. In a small, quiet town nestled between hills and meadows lived a woman named Abigail Reed. She was a woman of simple means, humble and faithful. Every morning before the sun had risen, she would kneel beside her bed and whisper her prayers, asking God for strength to get through the day, for guidance, and occasionally for a little extra blessing to ease her burdens. For years, she had lived next door to a woman named Eleanor Hayes. Eleanor was the picture of prosperity. Her home was larger, her garden more vibrant, and her social gatherings filled with laughter and joy. Abigail would often hear the sounds of music and merriment drifting over from Eleanor's house, her heart tightening with a mix of envy and longing. One evening, after a particularly difficult day filled with unpaid bills and a sense of loneliness, Abigail knelt down once more to pray. This time, however, her request was different. "Dear Lord," she whispered, her voice trembling, "I ask you to bless me. Just one blessing, Lord, that can ease my life and bring me peace." To her surprise, a voice answered. It was soft yet powerful, filling the room with a sense of divine presence. "Abigail, I will bless you as you ask, but there is one condition," the voice of God said. "Whatever I bless you with, I will bless your neighbor twice as much." Abigail froze. Her mind raced, and immediately Eleanor's face came to her mind. The thought of Eleanor receiving twice the blessing, having even more than she already had, twisted something in Abigail's heart. She had lived in Eleanor's shadow for so long, constantly reminded of her own struggles by the sight of her neighbor's good fortune. Could she bear to see Eleanor's life become twice as charmed? She sat on her bed, her hands trembling. Her faith had always been strong, but in that moment, envy gnawed at her soul. For hours, she paced, thinking about the condition, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on her. Chapter 2, The Struggle. For the next few days, Abigail couldn't shake the thought of the offer. Everywhere she went, she was reminded of the potential blessings she might receive and how Eleanor would get double of whatever it was. In the grocery store, she saw Eleanor buying fresh produce while she herself had to settle for discount goods. On her walks, she would pass Eleanor's garden, blooming with roses and hydrangeas, while her own garden remained modest and plain. The unfairness of it all festered inside her. Why should her neighbor, who already had so much, be rewarded more than she? The jealousy that had once been a small whisper now became a loud, persistent voice in her mind. One night, after tossing and turning in bed, Abigail decided to pray again. But this time, her prayer was different. "Lord," she said, her voice resolute, "if you must bless Eleanor twice as much, then take one of my eyes." The room fell silent. Abigail felt a cold shiver run down her spine. She had asked for something terrible, but she believed it was the only way to ensure that Eleanor wouldn't surpass her in happiness and fortune. She had found what seemed like a twisted solution. If she was willing to give up part of herself, then surely Eleanor's blessing would come at a cost too. God's voice, sorrowful and heavy, finally responded, "As you wish, Abigail." Chapter 3, The Price of Envy. The next morning, Abigail woke up to darkness in her left eye. Panic seized her as she stumbled to the mirror. One of her eyes had indeed gone blind, just as she had asked. She stared at her reflection, the reality of her decision hitting her like a wave. In her bitterness, she had sacrificed her sight, and now she was living with the consequences. But something gnawed at her even more than the loss of her vision. She wondered, what had happened to Eleanor? Was she suffering too, in some way? Summoning her courage, Abigail went to Eleanor's house. When she arrived, Eleanor greeted her warmly, her face radiant with joy. "Oh, Abigail," Eleanor exclaimed, "you won't believe it. Something wonderful has happened. I went to the doctor yesterday and he told me that the vision in both of my eyes has improved drastically. I don't even need my glasses anymore." Abigail felt her stomach drop. Eleanor had received twice the blessing, just as God had promised. While she had lost one eye, Eleanor's vision had been made perfect. Abigail forced a smile, congratulating her neighbor, but inside her heart twisted with regret and shame. She had been consumed by envy, and now she was paying the price, living half-blind while her neighbor thrived. Chapter 4, The Lesson. As the days turned into weeks, Abigail's life grew darker, both literally and figuratively. She could no longer ignore the emptiness inside her. the bitterness that had led her to make such a drastic and self-destructive choice. Everywhere she looked, she was reminded of the consequences of her envy. Eleanor's garden seemed to bloom even more brightly, her home filled with laughter and joy, while Abigail's life became a lonely struggle. One evening, in a moment of deep reflection, Abigail knelt by her bed once more. This time her prayer wasn't for blessings or revenge. "Lord," she whispered, tears streaming down her face, "forgive me. I was blinded by envy long before I lost my eye. I see now that I have hurt myself more than anyone else. Please help me find peace within my own heart." There was no voice this time, but Abigail felt a strange sense of calm wash over her. For the first time in weeks, she realized that the true blessing wasn't in what she could gain or lose, but in learning to let go of her jealousy and accept the life she had. As the years passed, Abigail slowly found her way back to peace. She tended her small garden with care, no longer comparing it to Eleanor's. She reached out to her neighbor, not with envy, but with kindness. And though she would always live with the blindness in one eye, her heart began to heal, seeing more clearly than ever before. In the end, Abigail learned that blessings weren't measured by how much one had, but by the contentment found within. The end.